Leaders, real life leaders.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode, and we're so excited. We have Brandi Marek of Ferguson Alliance, and today we're talking about how to increase your value in your business. We're also talking about how family businesses can be hard, not just family business, but privately held businesses. You know, sometimes, especially with privately held businesses, decisions that should be simple can become a lot more complicated because of family history and relationships or employees that have been there for a long time. And sometimes you might be at a stalemate. And we are going to be talking about how to increase your value, but also how to make it through successfully. So, Brandi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk a lot about practical strategies to kind of help people overcome challenges and to grow their business, but also to exit when they're ready. So I want you to talk a little bit about one of the things that I think people don't realize is that they might be thinking about exiting sooner than they're ready to exit. And so if you kind of had like a checklist, right, to kind of go, are you exit ready, right? What would that look like for you? Give us some practical things that we could say, okay, yep, you are exit ready.
Well, I would say if you're thinking about it too soon, then you're really ideal. We oftentimes we see and experience that clients they have a lot of their net worth in their business, and they are thinking about either retiring or exiting their business, or maybe they have a health related concern that comes up. Oftentimes we see it when it's sometimes later than they would like. And so the quicker that you can get started and be thinking about this checklist, the better. And so things you want to be thinking about are, how marketable is your business? Do people know about you? Have you created a competitive advantage? If someone were to see that you were potentially thinking about selling your business, would they go, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity to really lock in on this industry or in this product group or with this customer type? So be thinking about that. Thinking about what's your concentration, what's your level of involvement in the business. People are looking to buy a business, they are not looking necessarily to buy a job. So thinking about, if someone purchases your business, what are they going to have to do once you're in it, once they are in it? Then also be thinking about, how involved are you willing to be in the sale of your business? Because depending on how your business is sold can really determine what your level of involvement is. Do you want to sell it and walk away? Are you willing to stay on for a year? You know, what does that look like for you? What are the needs for you or your family or for any of the other employees involved in your business that you want to be thinking about? Then you also want to be very conscious of what your customer concentration is, and do you need to spread that out in order to? That's a huge risk. If a buyer comes in and sees that 60% of your business is with one customer, that's a huge risk and something that you want to start trying to mitigate before. And a lot of these things can take time, so that's why if you are thinking about if you might have just a little bit of an indication that you might want to sell your business later on down the road, it's really good to start thinking about these things now, because it takes a while to unravel a lot of what we just discussed. And so the more time you have, certainly the better.
So we just did a wonderful episode with a guy, and he was talking all about how to increase the value of your business as well. But one of the things he talked about is a lot of people don't realize that, in his opinion, he was saying most of the companies are about 2 to 3 times of what profit is. So he was talking about, let's say the annual profit for easy numbers was $100,000 a year. So depending on the business, you're gonna sell the business for $200,000 to $300,000. And then the part that confused some people, we got a bunch of questions come in that people didn't understand what he was talking about. he was talking about then you should subtract out the owner's salary.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I want you to do is explain that, because really you can only subtract the owner's salary if that person is kind of like not doing anything, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you got to replace that person. Talk about that for just a second.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you're in that calculation phase, you're absolutely correct. You're going to look at that. If the owner is getting a salary and they are doing no operational duties, then certainly you want to add that back in, right? That's an expense that's going to go away. But chances are, to some degree, that owner is providing some sort of operational duty that will need to be replaced. So if you as the owner are the general manager of the business and you want to sell it and you do not want to be involved in that business anymore, regardless if you are or you aren't, that role is still going to need to be replaced. That expense is still going to live there. And I've seen it go both ways within businesses, to where the owner was very much undervaluing their service. And so then going out to hire this role costs a lot more than it was when it was the owner. Or the other direction, the owner was paying himself or herself quite a bit, and it was nice, and they were able to replace that role for a little less. So it's definitely something that you have to consider and you have to think about and factor into your math when you are determining that value. But yes, I would agree. I would say average standard is about three times your profit, your EBITDA. Our goal is to help you get to maybe 4 to awesome best case scenario, like a 7 times that, through really scrutinizing um, your processes, your people, and thinking about how you're generating your profit.
So right before we got on the call, you talked about 3 things that you look at when you're looking at a business and what range they are in.
Mm-hmm.
What are those 3 things?
So we look at people, process, and profit, and to some extent, like what's your strategy? So we really like to take a very high micro level look at your business and thinking about what is generating your EBITDA, what's making your profit, and where do you need to focus on. Some organizations really need to focus on people. Maybe they're a two-man show, or they've got just a handful of employees and everybody's really frazzled, right? So they really need to focus in on getting more people involved in the organization. Or like I've already kind of touched on, maybe we discover that, wow, they've got a high concentration in customer content, or one customer that they really need to diversify that a little bit. Or maybe we see like their processes are very complicated, they're not documented. For new people to come to the organization, there would be a huge learning curve that they would have to undergo. Maybe a lot of stuff that's going on there doesn't quite make sense, or it's not maximizing the ability to profit. So, for example, we had a manufacturing client, and they didn't have an issue selling. They have a very robust selling team that are able to sell a ton of multiple different products. They had something like 5,000 SKUs in their inventory. But they had a very small production facility, and so this production facility was constantly having to to go in between all of these 5,000 SKUs, trying to figure out and try to keep up with what was being sold everywhere. There was not a lot of strategy around what they were selling, how many they were selling, and when they were selling it. And so everyone every day is literally just like at the starting line of the race, waiting for it to start and just take off running the whole day, running, running, running. And so that, from our assessment, tightening up those processes, tightening up that strategy, in some cases, reducing the amount of SKUs that you're offering makes your business way more attractive to a potential buyer. Because again, they are looking to what is going to give me the best return on my investment. Something that's not going to be something that I have to radically clean up when I get in there. So that can be very helpful. And then never overlooking the people involved. Um, these are often can be your historians. So they have been there for the evolution of the business. They are able to really be a key component to that transition. And then understanding, are they wanting to grow with the business and help take it to the next level? So thinking about your people and how involved they're going to be and what they're going to do and where they're going to take it can be very, very helpful in adding to that value.
So there was an episode of Shark Tank, and the guy, it makes me think of this story, and it's one of my favorite stories. I'll actually never, ever forget it. And the guy says, he was talking and he goes, so tell me, he was like, we sell lemon pies, we sell blueberry pies, we sell all these different pies. And then he says to him, well, how many sweet potato pies do you sell? And he's like, 80% of our pies is like 85%. And I don't know the exact numbers, but it was like 85% was sweet potato. And then he's like 1% lemon, 2% blueberry, and kind of started,
Yeah.
and he is like, well, if 80 some percent is going to be sweet potato pies, you shouldn't be selling anything else. Sweet potato pies. He's like, think about it. Every time you got this flywheel going, right?
Right.
Every time you're making the sweet potato pie, you're doing good. But then it's like, up for the 1% we're selling lemon pies. Oh, we're out of the lemon. The recipe's messed up. And he's like, you're missing your flywheel on that
Correct.
sweet potato pie. And he had so many different ones. Like, that's what's holding you back. And he's like, because you're not simplifying the process
Correct.
for that. So on the reality TV show, The Prophet, Marcus Lemonis, who's one of my absolute favorites, he says there's 3 P's of business: people, process, and product. And those 3 P's can help you, evaluate your shop. You can make improvements. And what's funny is you're saying, which I really like, you're saying, when I look at a business as a whole, I look at the people, the process, and the profit to decide whether that business as a whole is right. So talk about the difference between your 3 Ps and Marcus's 3 Ps.
Yeah. Product definitely resides under that profit piece. If we're talking about how, obviously the business is selling a product or a service in order to generate that profit, which can be very, very important. You can't overlook the product or the service that you're offering. I just think the biggest difference is, from a profit standpoint, we take that into consideration. We also take your what's your expense to produce that product or to offer that service. So we kind of bundle it all up there together, and looking at it that way. I'd say that's probably the biggest difference. Is just when we say profit, we're really looking at the process of creating that product or service, and then also what is the profitability of that product or service that you're offering.
So as far as the process goes, name a situation where you kind of came in and helped somebody to build that process in a different, really improved the business.
So we do a lot of extensive work with clients around process. And oftentimes this is where we can create the most value, because people get so ingrained in what they're doing every day. They can often forget why they do something the way that they do it. And it takes that kind of third party perspective coming in and asking just questions. And then you can see that person going, well, I don't know why we do it like that. I just do it like this because this is how I've always done it, or this is how I was taught whenever I came on board, that this is how it's done. But I'll say, you know, a good example for this that we looked at again with our manufacturing client is thinking about their order processing timeline. So they really weren't aware of some of the external factors that went into not into their order processing timeline necessarily, but for their competitors. So how quickly their competitors were fulfilling orders and turning that around. So exactly like your example that you're referencing, because they had so many SKUs and they were constantly having to shift when they were manufacturing these parts, this created a delay in their ability to deliver these parts quickly. So by assessing what their competitors were doing and how quickly they were able to deliver on these parts, helped them see like, oh, okay, maybe like you're exactly right. The 1% of the lemon pies is not worth it if it's going to delay delivering 80% of our product that we live in, that pay these bills. We don't want to delay that 80% to create this 1%. So really assessing what were the competitors doing that were causing customers to choose their competitor over them, and looking at that. So that led to a reduction in SKUs and speeding up their order processing timeline, being able to deliver those items more quickly helped them, because from a service side, the customers really preferred to deal with them. They felt like they got better customer service with them versus the competitors, but timing essentially won out in the end. And so they were able to start fulfilling both of those needs for their customers in terms of time and service.
So of the three P's, people, I think, is one of the most important. And without good people and good processes and good products only do so much. So let's talk
Mhm.
about, I think CEOs and leaders are most frustrated with right now is, I would say, that people are kind of job hopping more than ever, and like one little thing and they're kind of out the door. So you can't
Mhm.
so much emphasis on one person. So give us some tips on this of what kind of things you're doing. Number one, to hire the right people. Number two, to keep and retain and train the right people.
Yes. So people is my favorite one of all the P's. I really gravitate towards any kind of people project that I may see, because I really love getting people in their place, fulfilling their purpose. So the first tool that we always start with is we do some behavioral assessments with individuals and then look at, from a team perspective, how all of their individual components roll up into that team. And so we use a DISC profile that we assess people with in organizations, and then we go from there. So identifying a really kind of trying to determine, okay, where does the organization as a whole want to go for the future? What's the strategy? And now, how armed are you from a people perspective to carry that out? And so then you can start there and determine, what type of person do I need to hire then in order to fill some of those gaps? And so then when you transition into your hiring phase, you want to make sure that you're very clear on what it is that you need this person to do. Nothing can crush a hiring process more than ambiguity around a role, either from a job description standpoint, or we often do not realize how detrimental to the organization it can be if the people that are already working in your organization don't understand what the person that you're trying to hire is going to do. So when that person starts, if they're not clear on like, this is what they're going to be doing, that can be very detrimental to the organization. And we see this more times than people realize. You think, I need this type of person, or this person left, we just need to fill them in, but you're not necessarily thinking about, okay, do we really need that person to be able to do all the things that this person did? Or how does that align with where we want to go for the future? Do we need to shift what this role does or what this role looks like in order to push forward to the future? So thinking about the best when you're thinking about hiring, thinking about what is this person going to be doing, and does everybody in the organization know what they're going to be doing? That can be very beneficial. When it comes to retaining an employee, you really need to take a few steps back and be thinking about your culture. Again, is everyone clear on where you want to take the organization? Are you consistent in your ability to lead the organization in that way? Or do you sometimes you talk about it and then you don't address it for a whole nother year until your annual strategy meeting, right? Are you living and breathing the purpose and the mission of your organization? That's what people want to get behind. They want to feel like they are part of a bigger picture. And are you helping them feel like they're part of this bigger picture? The culture is huge, and that's where your executive leadership really comes into play in order to facilitate and help that.
So one of the things that you said was you can help businesses maybe take it from 3% of, I'm sorry, not 3%, 3 times EBITDA
Mhm.
to possibly, 6 or 7%. So what are some things
Mhm.
you would do to come in to look at a business and go, all right, we've got to increase this number? Because the truth is, if someone has a business and if let's just say their profit was 100,000 and they ended up only selling the business for 200,000 or even
Mhm.
100,000, it's kind of like not worth it. You know what I mean? Like it's like,
Right.
can you live off of that money, for the rest of your life? My grandmother just passed away this past week and she was
Oh,
102. Well, she
wow.
yeah, I mean, she lived a wonderful life. She was 102. She died in her sleep, which is like in her own bed that she's lived in
Right.
years. It's kind of like you can't be sad about that. That's like the
Right.
possible way for you to go, right? But thinking about like if someone wanted to retire at 60 and sell their business and people are living longer and longer, they need to have money from 60 on.
Mhm.
And if you just turn around and sell your business, for 2 to 3 times, that's could be a problem.
Yes. Yes, and we run into this literally, I want to say with 95% of every engagement that we start is people believe that their business is worth a lot more than in that moment it is. And that is always a heartbreaking truth for people to hear. But oftentimes, these businesses are you're just in the thick of it as the owner. You're trying to make it happen. You're trying to you have started it from when you were likely the only employee to where it is now. You've been the person that has done the sales and the accounting and the service or whatever product you're providing. You've been involved in all of it. And if you haven't done a good job, or not only want to say a good job, if you just haven't put an emphasis on expanding out that knowledge and creating a team that does a lot of those things as well, or maybe even better than you do, that is where a lot of those decreases in that in those points can occur. And so again, getting your business operating as ideally as possible, especially from a people and a process standpoint, looking at that, really being honest with yourself around, yes, I have got to hire somebody else to do this. Yes, this process really sucks and we have got to reformulate this. really thinking about if someone knew where to come in here and we had to explain this to them, would I be like, oh, this is going to be challenging? Or would you be like, no, we are confident in the accessibility of this, in the way that this is explained. We feel good about this. Just asking yourself those things and starting with what's adding the most value to your customer and your product. And if it's not, then having to be like, okay, we've got to reevaluate this or we've got to let this go. This is often where some of the most painful work happens because often there's an emotional attachment either to the people that are working in the business or in the way that you've done something or a customer that you've serviced. Um, and so it's very challenging. So my biggest advice here is to align yourself with some professionals that have seen it before and can be there to tell you like, this is normal, this is not normal, this is what I would do next. Because as an owner, you're so emotionally attached to your business, and rightfully so. This can be that kind of reality check for you. A lot of it is mindset. So we always kind of joke and say, we feel like 50% of the time we're more therapists than business advisors, but it's really true. Getting the people in the organization, getting the owner to realize where they are from an emotional place, um, can really impact that process and take it to the next step.
So one of the things that I've had a few CEO friends and even me who I want to write a book, I'm in the process of writing it called How to Delegate Everything But Sex. And because
I
I love
love
to
it.
delegate things and I feel like that's my spiritual gift is to delegate. I
Hmm.
personally, just to be able to be more profitable. And so even to think about the exit strategy and thinking about, keeping profits way up, I've taken on a few extra things that in the last couple of years that I wouldn't have anything to do with.
Hmm.
And I think that more and more, some friends of mine with CEOs are like, I used to not do this. I used to not do
Hmm.
this, but as margins have been, coming down and with my business, with real estate, it's so frustrating because it's kind of the race to the bottom and all the
Hmm.
real estate companies have gotten to the point where they're like, let's just, lower, 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 race to the bottom,
Yes.
race to the bottom. And then you just don't have enough meat on the bone to be able to, and you want to be competitive and so forth. So,
Hmm.
I've heard some other CEOs say that as well, that, hey, listen, this has been very trying because I am taking on more. So, what is your opinion on that? Of, hey, a lot of businesses are slowing down, um, and the owner is taking on a few more things. C-level people are taking on more things. How do you combat that?
It's very hard right now, especially given with the dramatic rising increase in everything is costing right now. That's very, very challenging and a really good question to think about how you can do that. Some suggestions or just some pointers or some tips that I would give out would be to really increase your scrutiny on your hiring. Really thinking about if you are hiring someone, what are they bringing to the table? Oftentimes we tend to hire people that are a lot like ourselves. So if you have the ability to have someone else involved with you with in the interviewing process, that can be very beneficial. So you can really be looking for what are the things that someone could bring to the table that of the things that you just can't do yourself. So thinking about it from that perspective, how you're hiring, who you're hiring, and what they can offer. Two, there are a ton of different solutions now for, especially with services like Upwork and things like that, where you can very much just piecemeal out some of the things that need to be done without any kind of obligation to a full-time employee or to, um, retain them for a certain period of time. You can, very much like transactional. So exploring opportunities like that. And then, technology, apps, software, never underestimating the power of automating some of the things that you do. And if that's available to you, or if that would be possible, I think that's uh, I always go back and forth with technology because it can be very helpful and it can be very confusing. But often finding and encouraging clients to think about it in a different way and just explore, because it is so rapidly and so dynamically changing. Um, Keeping that on the forefront of mind there can be very helpful. But I will say that probably more than ever, it is very, very challenging to do right now, because even just when we're talking about hiring, it's more expensive to hire people now. Hopefully we'll see some leveling out there. It seems like there is some rumblings of that. But I think it will continue to be challenging. So all the more reason why we have to force ourselves to think outside the box, and continue thinking about that.
All right. Well, we'll end with this listener question. He's from Las Vegas, Nevada. It's Jim Renzeridan. And it says, what is the best ticketing system that you've ever used for handling support for customers and clients that doesn't cost an arm and a leg? We are getting a ton of service tickets and it's a nightmare making sure people are responding. He goes on. And then the final question is, do you use any programs to make sure people are doing what they need to do, like checklists to make sure that they're, kind of, I'm not going to read the rest of the email, but basically kind of two prongs to that question. One is, clients messaging into an email inbox and making sure that inbox is handled and
Hmm.
responded to, any programs that don't cost an arm and a leg. And then the second facet of that is, what's your favorite program for, employee kind of checklists and things to kind of keep them accountable for doing what they need to do? You have any of
Hmm.
either of those?
From a process ticket standpoint, I don't have any personal experience with anything like that. I know that there are a ton of apps out there that are available, to do that. From an internal employee check kind of process orientation, I have used Monday.com in the past and have really enjoyed that. It's very visually appealing. Um, and multiple people can get in there and provide updates and see updates. So that would be my go-to for that. I loved Monday.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've used a couple of different email-based ticketing systems. I think Zoho was one of the ones that we had used.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Zendesk was another one, but
Yeah.
I also remember that some of those are really expensive. Like,
Yes.
really can get extremely expensive. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think
Yeah.
Zendesk or Zoho is one of the two that we've used in the past.
Yeah. So we use Zendesk for our CRM. And it's it's very nice. It's very robust.
Awesome. Well, this
Yeah.
is amazing. Tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Sure. LinkedIn is probably the best place to follow me. I'm on there. And then checking out our website, ferguson-alliance.com. We have a ton of resources on there. We are constantly producing articles, and there's webinars on there that you can watch. You can search by topic, and all of those will come up. And yeah, of course, any podcasts that we've been on are also on there as well. And so our website is really top notch. That's where we pour a lot of our energy into that, because it's important for us to feel like clients or potential clients are comfortable with our operating style. And so that gives a good peek into that.
Awesome. Well, you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Life Leadership. If you'd like to get the show notes or access more resources, log on to reallifeleaders.com/podcast to get the show notes from this episode and any other resources we might have mentioned. And also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to review or rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts to help spread the word. And if you have any leadership questions you want answered, email podcast@reallifeleaders.com.